Hey folks, it's Rob and welcome back. We're continuing our series today on the Dungeon and Dragons expert set, the blue box, as people may have called it. Uh, you know, I'm enj- I do enjoy doing these with you, and uh, I'm glad you're still here with me. This is the Dungeon Masters section. We have spent the last 9 parts on the players section of this book, and I'm sorry we don't have a document on screen at the moment. My document camera did die while I was filming uh, about a month ago, and I'm working on a replacement, but I don't have it yet. So, rather than interrupt videos, we're just focusing purely on the PDF. Um, but yes, you can see here the Dungeon Master section. The margin is dark, kind of charcoaly. It's kind of hard to see with the black background, admittedly. But the pages are marked differently than the players section. And I will flip back to show. See, you can see we have a gray margin here, and it is much darker here in the Dungeon Master section. It is technically here in this margin here. Um, we're going to begin with procedures. Yes, because we have a variety of new procedures or rules clarifications along the way. And there will be things to talk about. So let's start. And as it says here, if you play but do not DM, stop reading here. Welcome, Dungeon Masters. We'd like players to become Dungeon Masters. So, don't take that as a warning to not hang out here. But the game is, in a way, more interesting as a player if you don't know how everything works. I play in a game. I've certainly run games. The Forever DM, I can assure you, does want to play in a game. And the only way that happens, really, is if players also run games, right? So, let's get into it. Procedures. The following procedures are covered in this section. Clans for demi-humans, climbing, combat special types, construction details, experience points for monsters, followers for name level characters, mercenaries, mixing character levels, NPC parties, overusing dice, research, magic spells and items, specialists, spell books, lost, strongholds, swimming, taxes, and wishes. And we're going to start at the top of the list with clans. The demi-human races of dwarves, elves, and halflings have different ways of life than humans. They usually live longer, have a stricter way of life, and find security in large human family groups called clans. A clan may include several hundred demi-humans. The head of the clan is always the oldest member, male or female. Day-to-day tasks are usually done by those best suited to do them. Unlike many human communities, few demi-humans are lazy. Everyone has a job with clan duties and responsibilities, and goofing off is nearly unthinkable. Well, not what I typically think of with a halfling, but many other aspects of demi-human family life, such as marriage, customs, moiety, industry, clan-to-clan relations, and so forth, may be developed as needed. Your local library should have several books on human clans, which can be used for guidelines. See followers and strongholds for additional information. Demi-human preferences. Elves and dwarves don't usually like each other. This dislike usually surfaces as verbal battles rather than physical. Both get along fairly well with halflings. All demi-humans cooperate with humans. Though men can be dangerous, they are also trustworthy and have many good points as short-lived races go. Climbing. Thieves, and only thieves, have the special ability to climb sheer surfaces, but many situations can arise where some easier form of climbing is desired, up a tree, steep hill, wall with handholds, etc. Generally, any character with metal armor will not be able to climb well. I mean, you are wearing a considerable weight, right? And have restricted motion, possibly, because of how the armor is set up. Just as an aside, right? So, characters in leather or no armor should be able to climb easily, with only a slight chance of falling. In situations where normal climbing might be attempted, first decide on a base chance of success. For example, if characters seek to spend a night in a tree with many overhanging branches, there might be an 18 and 20 chance of successfully climbing by unarmored characters. Modify that chance for those in chainmail armor, perhaps to 11 and 20. To those in plate mail armor, you may wish to use a character's dexterity or strength scores to find the chance of falling. Success might be indicated by rolling an ability score or less, using 1d20, 3d6, 4d6, or some other means. So yeah, you don't have to rely directly on a straight d20 for an ability check, as it was actually illustrated in the basic set. You can decide that as the DM. This is a more difficult or easier ability check. Rolling under your stated ability with, increasing numbers of dice, depending on the size, can mean an increased difficulty. Whatever chances you decide to use, make a note of them so they may be applied equally and fairly in future games. Remember that falling characters take 1 to 6 points of damage for each 10 feet fallen, but it should be very unlikely for an adventurer, however weak, to be killed by falling out of a tree. So if they fell, you can be generous and say 8 feet, and they went, knocked the wind out of them. They're not, horribly injured, But if they fell out of the top of the 30-foot tree, maybe they hit a bunch of branches on the way down, trying to mitigate some of that. But, they fell off a 30-foot cliff. That's not good. Jumped off a 30-foot building. Not good. Combat. Special types. Yeah, you didn't know there were special types of combat, did you? Normal combat procedures are given in the D&D basic book sets. Of course they are. Aerial combat. In aerial combat, the creature highest in the air usually has an advantage. The DM may want to record on paper the altitude of each creature. Speed is also very important. Steadiness is needed to cast spells or fire missiles in aerial combat. A fly spell and a flying carpet provide steady support, but a mount that flies by flapping its wings is definitely not steady. Most magic items do not require steady support for proper use. Missiles fired from an unsteady or moving position have a -4 penalty to hit rolls. Certain flying creatures may also make a swoop attack, explained on page 45, on any opponent at a lower altitude. This attack, if successful, causes double damage. TSR offered a game for well before this book was published called Dawn Patrol. And that features World War I aerial combat. I would not be surprised if some people kind of utilize Dawn Patrol in their games. But, I don't expect you to. I don't. Air combat gets real complicated real quick if you try to model it. It could be... it's up to you. You're the DM, right? You're going to handle these kind of things. You're either going to theater of the mind it, or you're going to need a lot of, level support things for your miniatures. Another way to handle it is something kind of like Car Wars, where you have maneuverability class and speed, and I'm kind of picturing how many squares you move in relation to how quickly you turn. But again, that's reaching out into a completely different rule system for something that's not really directly supported in these rules. Unarmed combat. Characters who engage in combat without a weapon, for whatever reason, inflict 1 point of damage per hit, plus any strength adjustments. A normal hit roll is used. All standard combat rules also apply. So you're still going to kill people, it's just going to be pretty slow, right? If the fighter has 18 strength, or even the magic user has 18 strength, they hit for 4 points of damage each time they hit somebody. Just 1 point plus 3, whang. Wham. You roll a d4 for a dagger for the magic user. I'm just going to point that out. But if you were to have the magic user use their dagger, they would get d4 plus 3. So, it's not like unarmed combat is really ever better. Now, much later on, they're going to introduce a monk class. And we'll get there someday, but it's not today. I'm sorry. Mass land combat. Large-scale battles are beyond the scope of these rules. Role-playing is often neglected in such situations. Miniature rules from TSR, such as chainmail, are recommended and should be available at your local hobby shop. Large-scale battles often involve siege engines, catapult, ballista, etc. Details on their use is given in the D&D companion set. Catapults may be used on ships as described on page 44 of this set. Now, you can use chainmail for tabletop play, and they did later on come out with the battle system rules, which were meant to be used. And in the companion set, they'll introduce the war machine, which is kind of a more abstract way of handling large-scale fights. And it's interesting. It does require quite a bit of figuring. It's a math thing. But, you're not playing with the math rocks because you're dumb or afraid of math, right? So, yeah, that'll be described later, but not currently. Naval combat. Naval combat between small watercraft usually starts with missile fire and magic. When the boats are close enough, the enemy craft is grappled and boarded. See waterborne adventuring. Underwater combat. Some items and spells permit underwater adventuring. While submerged, combat with most missile fire is not normally possible because of currents, though crossbows may be used. Damage and hit rolls should be penalized at the DM's discretion except those of creatures who live in the water. And I gotta say, yeah, underwater adventure can be a really different turn of event. And in a lot of ways it is like aerial combat in the sense of like there is a 3D verticality to it, or it can be, right? Especially while you're still in open water. Bombing. Rocks and other items may be dropped from an altitude of 300 feet or less, using a hit roll of 16 or better, regardless of the target's normal AC. Damage depends on the size of the flyer. For example, if a man could be carried, the flyer may instead carry enough rocks to cause 2 to 12 points of damage to all within 10 by 10 area. 1 hit roll per victim. So this isn't just dropping one big rock on somebody. This is dropping a quantity of rocks to affect an area. Construction details. And this starts playing with some tables down below, because you can see we have some costs, construction costs and miscellaneous cost. And boy, a young focused child can certainly spend plenty of time building their own castles with this kind of stuff, I will say. Am I speaking for experience? You be the judge. I'm here today because of the little boy I was. Construction details. Before building a castle or a stronghold, the character must meet the basic requirements. See strongholds for more information. So basically, you're going to need to be fairly name level in most cases, except for the halfling, which can start a settlement / stronghold, whatever they call it, at any time as long as they have enough money to do so and a place that they want to do it in. So, but in most cases, that's going to be level 9. Wizards, magic users, is going to be level 11. But yeah, you're going to need to probably get to name level before this is an option for your characters. See strongholds for more information. When ready, the character must first clear the local area, map hex of monsters. So that's going to be, crawling around, just clearing the area of monsters. The map hex is not a small area. Imagine having to clear your entire county of monsters. The character enters the area with a force of men and fights or negotiates with monsters in the area. Yeah, so you could negotiate. You could even get them to leave. That's fine. You just need to clear the area. In fact, the game still supports you defeating monsters without killing them. The rules have always provided for you to negotiate and deal with an encounter without actually having to kill the monsters. The XP is always geared towards the treasure. Defeating and killing monsters is far less XP. in itself. And, if you can defeat them without killing them, you still get the XP. It says so in the basic set. So, when the area is clear, the player draws a complete map of the stronghold to be built, using the following details. After the DM reviews the plan, sometimes suggesting changes, an engineer must be found and hired, and construction begins. All cleared areas will remain free of monsters as long as they are patrolled. Patrols often range up to 18 miles from the castle or stronghold, but jungles, swamps, and mountains require a garrison to be built every 6 miles to keep the area clear. Additional area may be cleared and settled. Settlers can be attracted to cleared areas if money is spent on improvements, inns, mills, boatyards, etc., and advertising. These costs and the number of settlers who move into the area are the DM's decision. The settlers will pay taxes. 10 gold pieces per year per person is typical for support, protection, and so forth. And these, are free people, nominally. Obviously, how serfdom and how citizenry and all that stuff works. Oi, we're not getting into that right now, but that's going to be your game. That's your world that you're putting your characters in, right? The players are living in that world, and they are going to make decisions about how they run their fiefdom. And they're also going to be responsible to people around them in the world as to how they run their fiefdom. If they're under the Black Eagle Baron, well, things are probably nice for the serfs. But if you're, under Duke Stefan Karakamikos, yeah, they're free people, right? And they shouldn't be enslaved. And if they don't like how they're being treated on the settlement that you've created, they're going to move on. Castle plans. Castles and strongholds are expensive. Don't tell me. The most common plan involves small buildings within a large outer wall, leaving room for future additions. The most basic needs are for barracks to house hired fighters, a place for the character, and a simple defenses such as a small tower plus gatehouse. A full castle complex can easily cost over 250,000 gold pieces, which, yes. When drawing castle plans, the most common error is failure to allow for thickness of the walls. A castle's outside walls are about 10 foot thick, tower and gatehouse walls are about 5 foot thick, and stone house walls are about 1 to 2 feet thick. Costs and time. The following costs for typical structures are average. The DM may adjust the amounts for special circumstances. A nearby dwarven mining town might supply plenty of stonework at lower cost, but more supplies might have to be brought in for greater cost. The time required for construction is 1 game day per 500 gold pieces spent. This assumes that the land has already been cleared and prepared, and all the materials are on hand. For every 100,000 gold pieces or less in cost, 1 engineer must be hired. So for the example of 250,000 gold pieces, you're going to need 3 engineers, and it's going to take 500 days. Yes, that's going to take 500 days. Constructions in settled areas, such as home, tavern, or barn of stone, cost about 40% of the given amounts. Costs for wooden structures in such areas are about 20% of those given. DM may round off costs to the nearest convenient figure to make record keeping simple. So, you don't need to track every single silver and copper if you don't want to. As we can see, construction cost table. So a square keep, 60-foot base, 80 feet high, says 7,0. We've truncated off the 00. So this is 75,000. We don't use the 75K, but, we could use that abbreviation. Barbican, 2 20 by 30 towers, gatehouse, drawbridge, good secure entrance, 37,000. Round towers, a 30-foot base, 30 feet high, 30,000. Or 20-foot base, 30 feet high, 15,000. Other towers cost as normal until height equals width of base. So if you want a different shape, square, we're going to run with a similar cost. Higher towers cost twice the normal amount. Towers may be no more than twice as high as their base width. So you want a 100-foot tall tower, you need to have a 50-foot wide base. Bastion. Half round tower, 30-foot base, 30 feet high. That costs 9,000. Gatehouse, 30-foot by 20-foot base, 20 feet high, 6,500. Castle wall, 100 feet long, 20 feet wide. Just nice length. A castle wall, 5,000. Other walls, cost is normal to 30-foot height, but double cost from 30 to 60-foot height, the maximum. It won't allow you to build higher than 60 feet. Admittedly, it's a fairly medieval structures. You be the judge as to what the technology is like in your society, but in environment and what is available to the players. But, building a 60-foot tall building is really uncommon in a typical fantasy kind of environment level, right? Stone building, civilian, 2-story with attic, 120 feet of wall, wooden doors, stairs, floors, and roof, 3,000 gold. Wooden building, civilian as above, so instead of stone, but we're going to build wood, 1,500. Dungeon corridor, so you want to dig out dungeon corridor. It's going to cost you 500 gold per 10 by 10 by 10 stone flag dungeon corridor. It's 10 feet long, 10 feet high, 10 feet wide. Moat, around the walls, right? 10-foot deep moat. It's 100 feet long, 20 feet wide to go with that, wall we were talking about earlier. 400 gold to dig that moat. It is, unskilled labor. They're just going to be digging, but you need that labor to execute that work. Or you can use spells to move earth, right? There is an asterisk on here for certain entries, and it says, these plus internal walls and modest furnishings can be assumed by adding 25% to the cost of the basic structure. So, if you wanted to add basic internal walls and furnishings to the square keep or to the barbican or whatever, you need to add an extra 25% to that cost. There are some miscellaneous items here, so if you want to add some arrow slits or window, it's 10 gold each. Bars for windows, 10 gold. Door, a 3-foot by 7-foot door, which is made of just wood, 10 gold. Reinforced, 20 gold. Iron or stone, 50 gold. Secret, make that 5 times the cost. So a wood secret door would be 50 gold. A floor area, just a floor, maybe like you're building the patio, right? 10 foot by 10 foot. Okay. It's made of wood, 40 gold. If it's made of flagstone or tile, 100 gold. Roof, same cost as floors. Straightforward. But you'll need to determine how much roof you need to buy. Shifting wall. So you need a wall that a section of wall that just rolls aside, right? 10 foot by 10 foot, it's 1,000 gold. Shutters for those windows, 5 gold pieces. Stairs, a 3-foot wide by 10-foot long wood stair is 20 gold. Stone, 60 gold. And trap door, put that in the floor, cost doubles. So 4x3 trap door in the floor, okay, yeah, double the cost. Now, giving experience points. The following chart has been used to calculate all the XP values in the monster section. You should use it to find the XP award for monsters you design. So, monsters as listed in the various documents you're going to get will give their XP value for defeating the monster. If you have cooked up your own creation, we have a chart of hit dice, and if there's an asterisk, a special ability, there's an additional bonus per asterisk. So, and it says below that for every hit die over 21, add 250 points to both the base value and bonus. So, If your special creature is this weird little weakling thing that is under 1 hit die, the base value is 5 XP, and if it has special abilities, which it might, because you have these weird little monster things that are just really low. But let's say you wanted to make a slime. Just like a typical kind of Japanese RPG slime. Those don't really exist in this game. There is green slime, I can assure you, but green slime is way more tough than what is portrayed in video games as a slime. Slimes are usually portrayed in anime and video games as the most pathetic and weak creature that usually lives off of just eating plants somewhere or scavenging, right? And let's say you made, a slime. The base value, if it's an under 1 hit dice, would be 5 XP. And if it had a special ability, let's say it was, invisible. That would be a bonus 1 XP. Yeah, I know. Unimpressive. If it was a full hit die, so you get to roll a d8 for all its hit points, so it ranges 1 to 8, 10 XP the base value, and 3 for the bonus asterisk. 1 plus, so the pluses are just on top of the hit die total. So this is most important at lowest levels, becomes very marginal at higher levels. But because you don't add it to every die, you just add it to the total. So if it's 1 plus 1, that's 1d8 plus 1. If it was 10 plus 1, that is 10d8 plus 1. Yeah, you can see how that's not really making much of a difference to life. But it does move the baseline up. And a 1 plus hit die creature, even if it was plus 3, right? It's not making any distinction, although, I'd argue that if you're going to have a plus 3, you might as well just have a 2 hit die creature. It's 15 XP. And you can see this just increments, right? 15, 20, 25, 35, 50, 75, 125, 175. It does accelerate, you can see. And the bonus points also just kind of increment as well. 1, 3, 4, 5, 10, 15, 25, 50, 75, 125, 175. It just increases all the way up to 21, which is 2,500 XP base value and 2,000 bonus per asterisk. And that thing rolls 21 d8 for hit points. Yeah. Somehow that's... If your characters are so high level that they are fighting 21 hit die monsters, 2,500 XP is actually not much of a reward. The real reward usually comes with the treasure, like I said. I think we're going to stop there, and we'll pick up again next time. Thank you ever so much for joining me today. I hope you're having a great day. Goodbye.